Hello wine lovers, and welcome back to my wine diary. On this channel I do educational and fun videos about wine tastings and reviews, so if you're into wine as much as I am, please consider subscribing. Now you have probably noticed from the title of this video that we'll be talking about Sauternes today, or Sauternes if you want to give that French twist to the pronunciation. Now Sauternes is not one of my favorite wines just because of how sweet it is, but it certainly doesn't mean that that wine isn't interesting. So let's dig a little bit deeper into it. Like most wines of the old world, Sauternes is named for the region of Bordeaux where the grapes were grown. And speaking of those grapes, we have Sauvignon Blanc, we have Semillon, and we have Muscadel. So those grapes are left on the vines to age and reach that perfect condition for the grapes to be picked later. The special climate of Sauternes really encourages Botrytis, or the noble rot. Now what that means is that our grapes desiccate and they produce a much higher amount of sugar, so higher sugar content. And it takes a lot of visits to the vineyard to collect those shriveled tiny berries that are basically waited to be collected up until they reach the perfection level. And then through the vinification process, they're being put into barrels where they mature, and depending on the winemaker, different amount of the French oak is added to that maturation process. Now, the Bordeaux serving tradition of sweet Sauternes is serving it as aperitif. What that means is that our hosts ceremoniously open the bottle of Sauternes as the guests arrive, just like they would open very ceremoniously a bottle of champagne that was chilled previously. Now, speaking of chilled, a bottle of Sauternes in that serving tradition is placed on ice while the guests are arriving, and then it's served to every one of the guests. And because Sauternes is so concentrated and so sweet, usually a bottle is enough for 10-12 guests or so, so it definitely saves you the amount that people drink. As I have Sauternes in my glass here with me, I wanted to demonstrate its color, its legs, and everything else that you may see by me just bringing this wine a little bit closer to the camera. But the color here is definitely yellow to amber, so you can see how it's not a light wine by any means, so it's higher in alcohol content, that's for sure. It's got nice legs to it, and the color is just absolutely gorgeous. It's yellow to amber. I love it. Let's smell it and see how it smells. So on the nose here, I definitely smell some petrol, so that's usually an indication of maturation in French oak for white wines, and that's definitely something that comes through the nose. But it's also very fruity, so very fruit forward. A lot of blossoms. It smells like honey to me, maybe some cloves to it. Some characteristics that are usually belong to red wines we can notice in here as well. So imagine petrol smell, and I would say maybe even leather smell to it. A peculiar thing about Sauternes and its color actually is that it can turn into a rusty coppery color through the process of aging and maturation. Now let's talk about its price. Why Sauternes is so expensive at times? Now that of course has to do with the complex process of the winemaking itself. So as you know, it takes a little bit longer to produce it, hence the higher price. Now, a lot of times you will find Sauternes sold in half bottles or 375 milliliter bottles, which are cheaper and more affordable, and they can also be shared just in between 2 or 3 people, which is super convenient because you can't really take too much of Sauternes because of its sweetness. Sauternes is a very sweet wine. So I can assure you that this glass right here would probably be enough for me, and I couldn't handle more. So on the palate here, the first thing that strikes me is its acidity. And for sweet wines, acidity is something that's not that easy to achieve. So dry wines usually are richer in acidity, in my opinion. So the acidity in Sauternes here really kind of subtles the very sweet taste of it. And I actually taste the same very notes that I smelled earlier. So I taste a lot of honey in it, so a lot of honey, blossoms, sweetness, but that acidity just coats my mouth and makes it water at the same time too. Now let's talk about food pairings in Sauternes. So although it is a sweet wine, its brisk and palate cleansing acidity actually allows it to be paired with many different foods. And it used to be about 100 years ago that Sauternes was a first course wine. Now, why is that and why the change? So about 100 years back, the region of Bordeaux, Sauternes in specific, was a little bit cooler in climate. So our grapes didn't ripen as fast and as well. So the food that wine was paired with was more so first course. So think about some meaty fish, salmon and whatnot. Now, things have changed since then. Because of the nowadays climate, I would suggest that you are a little bit more experimental with Sauternes. So although I would say that it still pairs really, really well with poultry and turkey, maybe salmon as well, try it out, but also experiment and go a little bit crazy. So try it with, say, spicy Asian food. That acidity and sweetness in Sauternes will actually pair really, really well and balance the spiciness of Asian food really well. So check it out and don't be afraid to experiment. Guys, and this is everything that I had for you today. So thank you so much for joining me and watching this video. If you liked it, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I also have my social media platforms linked down below, so make sure to check me out on Instagram and subscribe. And I try to shoot videos every single week. It doesn't always happen that way because life gets in the way, but I definitely do my best. So you subscribing to this channel really means the world to me. Thank you for joining, and until next time, cheers everyone.